The third episode of Shogun is upon us. After a strong start with the first two episodes, I'm excited to see what comes next for the series, and how they will continue to navigate this fascinating story. And before we dive into my review for episode 3, I do want to take a moment to just address some of the comments I got on the last episode review. Many of these comments were fantastic, not only sharing your own thoughts, but also responding to elements that I discussed about the show as well, giving your own take or response regarding certain problems that I had with the episodes. These comments are all great and open up fun discussions about aspects of the show. However, some other people were of course upset with the fact that I am sort of nitpicking with many of the issues I did raise in my review. And I have to agree, I definitely am. And that is sort of what this is all about. My review is my take. And although I won't comment on every little detail in the series, you will hear me comment on certain things that I did feel strongly enough about or interested in enough to bring up. This can definitely start to feel like nitpicks, because obviously to a degree they are. But that does not mean I'm going to stop with them either. The point of a review is to judge and give an opinion on something. So if you are here to analyze and explore the show, great, let's do it. If you would rather I just praise every detail about it while leaving out any problems I have, then I'm sorry, but this might not be the video for you. I won't talk about this anymore throughout the course of my remaining Shogun reviews, but I at least wanted to get it out of the way now. And with that, I want to say thank you to everyone who is along for the ride with me here and engaging in the comments section. This is a great time to be a fan of Japanese history, as we can all partake in the viewing of this captivating show together. So, with that said, let's finally get on to the review. Episode 3 is titled, Tomorrow is Tomorrow. Without getting into too many spoilers here, this episode is all about the escape from Osaka, as Toranaga tries to sneak out of the city under the watchful eyes of the other hostile regents. And that is sort of the main plot point here, the escape. There's not a lot else major that happens in this episode besides further character development as well as some other minor things that will come to play a greater role later on. One thing that did strike me with this episode is that it did feel like they are rushing through certain details. This is something that I saw plenty of other people bring up in the comment section of the last video, but I didn't really notice it too much until now. Now, that doesn't mean what they are rushing through is necessarily bad either. But if you know the story from either the book or prior adaptation, then you will notice what parts they are either skipping or pushing through rather quickly. One significant part they sort of just glossed over was when Mariko brings up pillowing to Blackthorne. Yet they used this scene as a great springboard to then open up on Blackthorne talking about his wife and daughter back home in England, something he is able to connect with Mariko over, being that she too has a child. And I have to say this episode was mostly great for Mariko. Remember in the last video I was concerned about the route they were perhaps taking with her character. Well, here, like I suspected, as she starts to bond with Blackthorne, she does start to warm up. She definitely started to feel more like the Mariko we know, and eased any fears I had about Anna Sawai's interpretation. I think this is also aided by the fact that we also get to see her interacting with her son, something which I don't remember ever getting to see in the book or the 1980 version. And it's with this that we also really start to see more of Mariko's husband Buntaro, who is shown to be pretty mean from the get-go, which I think is good because I like that the audience will build up this animosity towards him compared to Blackthorne. I'm just curious how far they'll go with his character though, because he too, like each character, has very unique motives that would be fascinating to see further explored if enough time is given to them. But what is further interesting to compare is that if we are going off of that, Mariko is of course supposed to be Hosokawa Gracia from real history, that would make Buntaro her husband, Hosokawa Tadaoki. Stories do tend to portray Tadaoki as more of a rough figure prone to anger and outbursts, so some of this characterization being translated into Buntaro might make sense. Now, another character I'm really glad they are showing more of in this episode is Fujiko. I ended up really liking the character of Fujiko in the book, and everything they have done so far with her in the show has been pretty great to build her up. From the heartbreak and trauma that she experiences in the first episode, to now her role which will draw her closer to Blackthorne. I love that more attention is being given to her. But, moving on, getting into the actual escape itself, there are some interesting moments I wanted to briefly discuss, which, by the way, I imagine this will likely be the most spoilerish part of the video, just to warn you. First off, I found it odd the way Toranaga did this whole switch around with the woman in the palanquin. It just felt silly and it looked like he did it right in front of Ishido and his men, unless I am missing something. To be clear, in the book I think he was already in disguise and in the palanquin to begin with. Although I did like later on when Blackthorne covered for Toranaga by freaking out at one of the guards. In the book and in the 1980 version, Blackthorne actually acts like he is more insane and even puts his hands on Ishido, which would be a massive no-no. However, the fact that it's just a guard and Blackthorne is outbursting more about manners is overall a good change, I think. Moving on though, later into the night as they travel, the party does come under attack by one of the Christian lords. It's here that I do have several more minor gripes. Granted, these are nothing major. First off is the use of flaming arrows, which has really become quite a popular trope for night attacks in films and TV shows. And although there are uses out there for flaming arrows, I don't think it makes sense for an ambush like this, as they completely give the attacker's location away. Unless they are purposefully trying to light the palanquins on fire, in which case I guess that makes sense. But then we get more into a clash that breaks out where Toranaga starts fighting alongside his men in melee combat, which I don't really remember being the case in the prior versions, unless I'm wrong. The big thing about this is that I don't know if it makes sense that someone of his status would be in the midst of the fighting. But I am willing to let it slide due to how chaotic this encounter is. He was probably bound to perhaps get his hands bloody at some point. However, it is also here that we are exposed to Mariko as a fighter as well. This was definitely not the case in any other version of the story, or in terms of Hosokawa Gracia in real history, and I'm hoping that they do expand upon this and explain it further in episodes to come. Once again, it's not that women did not fight in pre-modern Japan, they certainly did, but it was rare. And I hope they don't try to spin this idea that all females of the samurai class were equally as skilled warriors as the males, because that's just not completely true. Female samurai fighting in pre-modern Japan seems to be a very situational thing. So I'm not going to judge her as a warrior just yet, but I do very much want to see where they take it. And for those of you who want to bring up that she fought in the book as well, I don't really count that. It's clear that in the book, although she swings a sword at someone at one point, she is by no means skilled with it, as her opponent counters and dodges every attack she makes until she gets worn out. But getting back into the episode, I think they cover the rest of the details here rather well and in a timely fashion. That, although, like I said, starts to feel rushed, doesn't necessarily ever reach a point where I think they were jumping a bit too far. I love the boat chase, and I feel it definitely captures the thrill of the moment from the book as well, as it shows even more about how Blackthorne really is a great leader and experienced pilot. And I especially liked Blackthorne's banter with Rodriguez during this scene, and I think that both these actors are great at feeding off of each other. Their escape, of course, comes to the dismay of the Captain General, who once again is also another great character who has an increased role in this episode, and definitely comes off as a great villain to hate, as he works to seek greater profit and eliminate Blackthorne at all costs. Now, the last thing I will talk about is Toranaga once again. With this show's pacing so far, we have missed out on several key bonding moments between him and Blackthorne, which I could see as a detriment to both of their overall character developments. I just don't know how invested I would be in either of these two characters if I came into this with no prior knowledge of the story or real history. It's hard to say. However, we do get one good moment between the two of them by the end of the episode, which I was glad to see. And to be honest, it's this scene that does start to give me a little more hope regarding Hiroyuki Sanada's portrayal as Toranaga, something which I mentioned I was unsure of in the prior video. So I do see that maybe he will start to grow more into the Toranaga of the book, as well as a better mirror of Tokugawa Ieyasu, but only time will tell if that will actually be the case. Alright, that's really all I have to say about episode 3 of Shogun. I definitely enjoyed episode 3, but it does raise some questions that I hope they will either answer or build upon in future episodes. I'm still very much liking the series, and hope that episode 4 really hammers down on keeping up with the quality and reaching new heights in the drama as the story unfolds. But, with that said, what are your thoughts on episode 3 of Shogun? Did you enjoy it? Did you agree or disagree with anything I said in this review? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell if you enjoyed this video and found it to be most interesting.